morning and welcome to Wellness Wednesday. I am Virginia Inge, a licensed counselor here at Family Health, and today we are so excited to have Mr. Daniel join us. So Daniel, will you please introduce yourself so you can do it completely without error?
Let me get my resume out here.
Right.
My name is Daniel Stombaugh, and I'm the property officer here at MCHD. And one of my roles here is the chairman of the Management Council. I have a background in ministry, and so the Wellness Wednesdays are something that I've enjoyed watching and tuning into because I find the value that they add to the community has been really awesome. And I enjoy the topics, I enjoy what you do, so I was excited to be here. So thank you for asking me to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Daniel is definitely a leader here at the Mobile County Health Department, and he leads, like you mentioned, he's the chairman of the Management Council, and each time that we meet monthly, he opens up with an inspirational message, and last time it brought most of the room to tears, so he's just got great insight, and, you know, this time of year can definitely be challenging in a lot of ways. Obviously, it's the spirit of Christmas, a lot of fun, a lot of excitement, a lot of parties going on and family gatherings, but it can create some anxiety in some people and even fear. So today we thought it was beneficial, and I will give credit to James that he brought up this topic, that sometimes we experience basically fear when we have not achieved the goals and life goals that we've dreamed of for so long. And sometimes during Christmas, you know, you're back at the round table with all your family members, all your aunts and uncles, and they ask you, well, have you gotten that dream job yet? Have you married the Mr. Everything? And that kind of thing, and it can be scary. You're like, well, I got this, this, and this, but I don't have this, and it can create some fear. So first of all, we just wanted to normalize that. Nobody has it all together, and sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves that is unnecessary. So with that, Daniel, can you shed some light for us and maybe help us?
Yeah, like you said, at those dinners and those conversations at the holiday, the reminder is there of where you don't want to be. We all have these plans and expectations of where we want to be in life. At this age, I thought I would have this. I thought I'd be driving this. I thought I'd be living there. I thought I'd be working at this profession. I thought I'd be done with school. I thought I'd have that person in my life. And so we have these expectations. And a lot of times the holidays are excellent opportunities to be reminded of what we don't have. And that shift of focus from what we do have to what we don't have is the make or break to me. That's what gets us in the holiday blues. That's what really promotes that feeling of depression during a time where it really should be a time of hope and joy and peace. Now, Virginia, I love the topic of the waiting game. And I wanted to talk about one of my favorite books here. I'm a reader, I'm a writer, and one of the things that I feel like helps me understand this waiting game was something that someone brought to me several years ago. It was this book called Cinderella. It's this little golden book.
Yes.
And
I know that story very well.
Right. It's okay. So the professional that brought this to my attention was my 6-year-old daughter. And she asked me to read this book to her one night. And so I'm sitting there, and it was during a holiday season. It was during a very difficult time for me and transitional period of life. And I was reading this book, and she likes it when I read the book because I did all the voices and the songs and all the different stuff with it. And I'm reading the book and pretending like I've never seen this book before. And she's responding to what I'm saying to her. So I'm reading the whole story. And if you know the story, Cinderella, and she starts out in the little tower, and she's happy with her dad, and her dad passes away. And so I'm going into the story. And every time we get to some of these big moments, I'm like, oh, this is so terrible for her. And she's like, Dad, just keep reading, just keep reading. But at one particular part in the story, and you probably remember this one, at this part of the story, she's at this bench in the garden, and she's crying because she wanted to go to the ball. And her stepsisters have taken away her dress, and they've told her she'll never be anything more than just the cleaner of the kitchen and the house chores. And she's at this bench, and she's just sobbing, and her life is pretty much not where she wanted it to be. So all these expectations of what she would have in life, here she was at this moment. And I get to this part with the story, and I told my daughter, I said, man, this is a terrible book. I can't handle this book. I'm done with this book. This is an awful story. And she said the profound thing out of the mouth of babes, right? She says, Dad, just keep reading because it gets better. because my daughter had seen the story and she knew that at the end of the book, you got this run off into the sunset, ride the carriage happily ever after, and that the garden bench was just a garden bench. It would be a spot in Cinderella's story that was just there as a part of it, but it wasn't going to define her whole story. And I think for many people, we get to these points in life where we have this benchmark moment, and it's that depressing moment that says, this is all I'll ever do, this is all I'll ever have, this is all I'll ever be able to enjoy, this is all I deserve to have. And we choose to stay here. And what changed that for that moment was this person here. And this is what I kind of referred to you as earlier. You were the fairy godmother
Honored.
of MCHD. But what the fairy godmother's role was a perspective presenter. Like, she presented this perspective of Cinderella's perceived reality that said, this pumpkin that you thought was a pumpkin, this is what this could really be. And sometimes that's all it takes. Because when we're in this moment in life, we tend to shut everybody off from us and say, I don't want to talk to anyone, I don't want to tell anyone how I'm feeling. But we rob ourselves of that person that could offer perspective, that maybe has seen it, maybe has been through it before, maybe knows that this is just part of the story, it's not the entire end of the book. So it's that person with the perspective that say, just keep reading just a little bit longer. And what she found was that this perspective presenter showed her that the pumpkin became a coach, and you know the story. And so this is kind of what your role here is to me, is that you offer that perspective to people that from the outside looking in that says, have you considered this? And that's, to me, that was awesome. That's a reality breaker versus perceived reality versus where we are actually in life.
Yeah, that is very, very insightful. And I think you're exactly right. Sometimes when you are discouraged and let down, maybe you're disappointed, you thought you were going to get something, you thought you were going to have gained something, but you didn't. You could blame yourself or others. So you're just in that moment on the bench and you're like, you know, what now?
Right.
And you even mentioned a couple of those negative thoughts that we all have, okay? Everybody struggles sometimes with negativity and thinking, that doomsday moment. And you're also so right. A lot of people that I see in particular, one thing that had led them into a full depression was just needing to handle it themselves and not reaching out and isolating themselves and just having this belief that they just needed to pretend to be strong and that they could just handle it. And it ended in, or not ended, totally didn't end, but it evolved into a very, very difficult situation with no job, you know, and very depressed. But you're so right. Sometimes we all need that light in our life to help us see a different perspective. And it's incredible. And it doesn't have to be a counselor. You know, your moment, it sounds like your daughter even shed some light into your life with that perspective, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So our point too is there is a silver lining. Be open to talking to somebody that you trust, and don't be discouraged. You know, switch it around for yourself, and realize that sometimes the reality that you perceive is not the true reality. But even if the fairy godmother has the wand and looks all fluffy and sweet and plump, she can't do it for you. You've got to believe. You've got to believe that pumpkin is going to turn into a coach. It's got to be you, right? She can't make you do it.
We've been given everything that we need to get ourselves out of those benchmark moments. I mean, we're surrounded with the things that we need, and sometimes we just close ourselves off. So it doesn't have to be a licensed counselor. A licensed counselor is awesome, and you can reach ours at 690-8889. That's one way to get in touch with one of our licensed counselors here. But it doesn't have to be that. It can be a friend. It can be somebody else to open up to. But absolutely, absolutely correct.
That's so wonderful. And like Daniel said, he has a history in ministry, and I do as well. And really, what helps me be effective, I believe, in my inmost being is that I come from a place of love. Okay? So when someone is truly heard and loved, that's the biggest healing power that I got in my toolbox, right? So like I said, it doesn't have to be a counselor. It can be someone that you just know loves you
Right.
and is going to listen. And it can make a huge difference, can it?
It's that realization that no condition is permanent. You know, my life looks completely different now than it did at that moment when I read the story, and nothing is going to stay the same. Things are going to change.
So true. And honestly, you begin to really appreciate those moments of despair because you're like, look what I did. Look at my resilience. Look how I went from there to here. It's amazing, isn't it?
Right, it is.
And then you can inspire others.
And even in the end of the story where they run off to in the coach,
Right.
you know, we know that as adults in a real world that this is not happily ever after, is hard
Yes.
and it's difficult. And if this coach goes down the road and it throws a tire and then Prince Charming suddenly becomes not Prince Charming, he's impatient, we know that she can always look back at that benchmark moment where she thought that things would never change for her earlier. And that benchmark has value at that point.
Right.
Those times in life where we do feel discouraged and we do feel depressed, those times can have value because if things change for us then, they can change for us now.
Right. And she even developed that character strength of optimism with the help of the fairy godmother.
Yeah.
And then I also thought that the prince, it wasn't all peachy for him, was it? There was a moment where he thought he'd lost the love of his life. All he had was a little glass slipper. So he had developed that character strength of leadership and pursuit. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
they can use those things as they go on with their life and become and be happy. Right, very good. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And again, Daniel mentioned the number to call. We hope that this was inspirational for you and encouraged you. Thank you so much, Daniel, for
Hey,
coming
thanks for letting me
on.
be part of it. I
All right.
enjoyed it.
Have a
Thanks.
great one.
Happy holiday.